Hi, folks. Welcome back. Dennis Vitosa, also known as F Noodles. And today we're going to be talking about another debate I did on Jubilee. Yes, another debate on Jubilee. Guess what? I'm back. I got to wear my pins again, got to put on my tie and comb my hair. Clearly, if you've been watching the latest few set of videos, you know that I've needed an excuse to comb it. Anyway, I got to debate three fine gentlemen, and it was a lot of fun, but I think you guys are here for a little more substance. And hey, we're all friends. We love each other, right? Kumbaya. The state of the country's falling apart. We're about to fight a civil war. Dennis, wake up! Oh, yeah. By the way, in case you haven't noticed, I do have a soundboard now. Yes, I do.
Fatality.
Yeah, that's the soundboard right there. I don't know how often I'm actually going to be using this, but it's here. And by the way, I'm also going to be playing around with some new editing tricks, so the videos may seem a little strange or a little disjointed over the next couple of days while I fine-tune everything. Just bear with me while you can, okay?
Oh, shit! Oh, shit!
Anyway, let's get into it. This whole debate was a little over an hour and a half long, and it was exhausting, to say the least, but it was also a lot of fun. I got to talk to these three fine gentlemen. I feel like I have said that one before. That said, I want to share one of my favorite moments from this entire debate because I think it really encapsulates a lot of what's been going on with the rhetoric and the conversations surrounding politics today in America. Specifically, this topic that was one of my favorite topics to debate was around the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, or euphemisms outside, the mass genociding communists that are flooding our politics. Americans should elect more Democratic Socialists like voters are doing in New York, Colorado, Maryland, and Washington, D.C.
See, this is why I disagree for the same reason he probably agrees. This is more of a strategic argument. First, we have to define what democratic socialism is. We have to define exactly what we're talking about because, like I was talking with Mason earlier, when you say democratic socialism, everyone is going to have some different definition. A lot of people think it's just social democrats, which is exactly how I identified myself at the start of the show. I'm a social democrat, which is how people in most of Europe, like Scandinavian countries, are. But democratic socialism, if we're to take their actual fundamental charter and intentions, the radicals of that group do want to abolish capitalism. I think that is a horribly losing strategy. So we have to differentiate. If we're talking about social democrats, which I honestly think is probably about 75% of the democratic socialists who just are confused and think they're socialists, versus the actual Marxists wanting to bring us into actual public ownership or governmental ownership of all industries. I think that is a very unpopular brand. So I want to be clear with which one we're talking
here's the thing. Let me just add one thing to it. They don't want to just abolish capitalism. Part of their platform is to, in fact, abolish the U.S. Senate.
Gotcha, bitch.
They
again,
hate everything about America.
Stop saying they, because
the DSA, who we're discussing. What do I have to reread the prompt for you?
I gotta reiterate. A lot of these DSA people are the
man. I am having way too much fun with a soundboard, but yeah, I couldn't disagree more with Jake. The DSA, they're literally the worst. Why is he even carrying water for these people? I genuinely don't understand. Jake is a traditional social democrat, which honestly, it's just a weird way to say you're a commie, at least to me. No disrespect, Jake, but why are you carrying water for these people? I don't get it. They want to abolish ICE. They want to abolish borders. They want to abolish prisons. They want to abolish capitalism. They want to abolish the Senate. They want to abolish basically everything that makes America, America. They want to rewrite the Constitution, basically. And look, here's the thing. I understand disliking some of our government institutions. I dislike the IRS. But the reason I dislike the IRS is because historically, we were never meant to have any sort of taxes, especially an income tax. The founders specifically didn't want us paying income taxes. In fact, for well over 100 years, this country operated under a tariff-based model where businesses in foreign countries paid tariffs in order to sell their goods to American consumers rather than taxing Americans directly on what they earned. I think that's a fairer model. My reason for wanting to abolish the IRS is rooted in this country's history and founding principles. This country literally fought a revolutionary war against the most powerful nation in the world at the time in order to stop paying taxes. Now compare that to abolishing institutions that were created as part of our constitutional system and are meant to provide representation within the legislative branch. What are we doing? Seriously. The DSA wants to abolish borders. We all know the real reason why the DSA wants to abolish borders. In my view, the goal is demographic change that ultimately produces an electorate more likely to vote for socialist policies. They're trying to reverse engineer America into some kind of Venezuela pre-shambles. That's why they want to abolish ICE. That's why they want to abolish borders. They want large numbers of migrants coming into the country who, in my view, will eventually support the same policies that led many of their home countries into steep decline. There's no other way for me to put it. And I mean this respectfully, okay? But I believe that the DSA and the people running the DSA and the people who support the DSA, I believe they hate America. And they hate foundationally what this country is and has meant over the last few centuries. Now, that said, I understand why a lot of the classical JFK Democrats feel politically homeless. I understand why Blue Dog Democrats feel like they don't have a place to go anymore. A lot of them have started moving over to the Republican Party, and I'm dealing with a lot of those people finding a new home in my party because we don't share the same values. These people are socially liberal, and they're trying to take my party hostage and move my party left now because they're too weak to take their party back. When in reality, they just have to stop acquiescing to the DSA. They have to stop carrying water for the Bernie Sanders of the world, okay? Because one of the primary problems with the DSA is Bernie Sanders. And you're going to see this in a moment because I'm going to show the clip, but both Jake and Chabos try to defend Bernie Sanders and differentiate him from the rest of the DSA. And I don't buy that argument. Bernie Sanders is the same person who went around campaigning for these people. AOC is the same person who went around campaigning for these people. They're the same people who supported Zohran Mamdani, who then turned around and campaigned on behalf of even more DSA candidates. Do you understand how that works? Do you see the game and how there's a trickle-down socialist effect? Bernie Sanders supported AOC, who supported Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani is now supporting the more extreme wings of the DSA. They're all connected. There's no meaningful differentiation. And this isn't about assigning collective guilt to every single Democrat socialist as an individual. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the movement advances in unison. Each generation of candidates pulls up the next generation. The more extreme wings get elevated by the people who are elevated before them. And later in the debate, as you'll see, Chabos mentions people like Chevalier, Brad Lander, and others. Those were people endorsed by Mamdani. And who endorsed Mamdani? Again, Bernie Sanders. Who helped elevate AOC? Bernie Sanders. The political infrastructure is all interconnected. This is a serious problem within the Democrat Socialist Party. The DSA has been very open about its strategy. Members of the organization, along with Democrats aligned with them, have openly discussed using the Democrat Party as a host so they can build their own political platform on top of it by gradually moving the party further left. They understand that building a viable third party in the United States is extraordinarily difficult financially, politically, and culturally. America has never been particularly friendly to third parties, regardless of how much money gets poured into them. So their strategy has been to use the Democrat Party as a vehicle for advancing their agenda. And in my view, Democrats have been too feckless to push back, too weak to push back. They've allowed their party to be taken hostage, and it doesn't have to be that way.
I'm just trying to understand. So both of you are trying to draw distinctions between the DSA. You're saying that you're a former Bernie bro who thinks that Bernie isn't like the rest of the DSA, and you're saying that
He's not.
He really isn't.
He's not.
I mean, which is kind of crazy because Bernie Sanders
He's
himself
literally
is
the
pretty
face.
radical.
That's the problem.
He's the face of the
There's the
Democratic
problem.
Socialists.
I don't think we're giving social democrats their actual own lane. We don't really have a social democrat party that has any prominence.
The guy's a
And I
socialist communist. How is he not DSA?
Well, again, I'm not a fan of.
He's not advocating for socialist communist policies in mass. Like what?
Correct. I'm not a fan of Bernie Sanders, but his DSA is qualitatively different than the current DSA.
So why is he
who are
going
agreeing
around
with all of
supporting
the-
DSA candidates?
Right. It's a problem. I'm not defending the guy, but it is very different.
Because
from
as I
years
think
ago.
Mason would agree with, because
You
these
guys are literally
candidates are trying
splitting
to
hairs to try to paint,
So I haven't
to try
said
to
anything
separate
about
Bernie.
entire-
I'm defining
this
what
entire
it is.
problem. Well, I think that if you specifically look at initiatives that are aligned with exactly what DSA is advocating for, like a higher minimum wage or ensuring that we have more regulation when it comes to those that are in the top 1% of this country, that absolutely is popular, even in places like Nebraska and Kansas. And if you look at even in Georgia, there's a plus 50 district for Trump in Georgia who love Donald Trump. You know who the second biggest politician they like in Georgia? Trump County, Georgia. AOC. It's
AOC.
crazy. And the reason why is because AOC came down from New York, a representative from a completely different part of the country, came down to speak to their needs. We'll probably talk about this later, specifically on an AI data center that is polluting their river and ruining their air. So that is indicative in it of itself that a lot of people feel disenfranchised by both establishments in the political party. I think most Republicans would say they don't like the rhinos. They don't like the establishment candidates.
The abolition of borders.
I
Do you
think-
believe?
I think that-
I asked the question
No.
first. Do you believe that that's a good idea?
There's
Yeah,
an
answer the
absolute-
question.
I am. There's an absolute difference between political theory versus policy implementation.
Great. So the abolition of borders.
I
You
think,
believe in
I think
that thing.
I think that striving.
I don't. No.
Okay, that's an answer. Yes or no?
I think that
It's just a
striving.
yes or no question.
I think that striving for a better future is not something that should be shunned upon.
How
I think
is
to eliminate the
abolishing
border.
borders
But
striving for
how
a
can you
better future?
sorry,
No,
last
I
point.
don't-
How can you possibly say
don't
that
agree.
no one is striving to abolish the border when the 3 DSA elected candidates in New York, whose names I'm all going to butcher, Brad Lander, Claire Valdez, and Dareliza Chevalier. Okay, I think I did an okay job.
enough,
Yeah, close enough. They have literally, maybe not Brad Lander, but they have literally stated that they believe in the abolition of borders.
Yeah,
so when you say we can quibble
no,
about these things, these
I
are
don't
real
think-
policies
I don't
right
think
now.
that we
So
need
I'm
to
just
abolish
curious.
the
So no,
police,
so you
or I don't
disagree with
think
the
that we
DSA.
need to
We're talking about abolishing
That is
ICE
not-
a moment ago, brother.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Exactly.
There's nothing
you
wrong
want
with
to abolish
abolishing ICE.
borders. Just own it.
Abolishing the TSA doesn't mean you're abolishing planes.
Sure, but abolishing the DHS does mean you're abolishing borders.
I did a bit of a supercut there. I cut together a few different moments so you can get an idea of some of the points that were being made in this discussion. But the most amazing thing about DSA people, and Mason is a DSA person, it's that these people speak mostly in euphemisms. The DSA really does have members who want to abolish borders. It's part of their platform. In fact, I pulled it up, and this is the DSA platform for 2026. They want to abolish ICE, and they package everything in euphemistic language. They'll use phrases that sound moderate until you actually click through and read what they're proposing. For example, right here it says, a Democratic Congress. Sounds harmless enough, right? But then you click on it and it says they want to replace a 2-party system with a multi-party democracy. Now, as someone who actually lived in a multi-party democracy, let me tell you what that looks like. It doesn't magically make government work better. It usually creates more friction, another hurdle to getting anything done. You still end up with factionalism. It still breaks down into left versus right. The only difference is that after every election, instead of governing, parties spend months negotiating with each other, cutting deals, and building governing coalitions before they can actually accomplish anything. It slows the entire process of governance down. The 2-party system, on the other hand, for all of its flaws, actually streamlines a lot of that needless back and forth because you don't have to spend months figuring out which coalition is going to hold together. And by the way, right here, they also have a call to abolish the Senate. That's just one example of how insane these people are. They also promote what they call economic democracy, which is really just a euphemism for dismantling capitalism. They propose aggressive wealth taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations in order to spend more on public goods and infrastructure, but nowhere do you see any meaningful discussion about accountability, government accountability, because as we all know, when the politicians get your money, they historically mismanage it. Just look at the state of California and how the billions of dollars collected in taxes here is never enough. They're always raising our taxes and they can never tell us how they spent it magically. So it's reasonable to want to know how that money is actually spent or what safeguards exist to make sure it's being spent effectively. Because right now the DSA's message is essentially, we're going to take more of your money, we're going to decide how to spend it, and you'll have to live with it, and we won't really tell you any of the results. Now the ironic part of this situation is the reality of America is that the top 5% of earners already pay roughly 60% of all federal individual income taxes. Meanwhile, roughly 75% of permanent means-tested government benefits go to households in the bottom 2 income quintiles. That's an important part of the conversation that often gets overlooked by these DSA Democrat Socialist types. They talk about, let's tax the rich more, but where are you going to get that money from when they're already paying way more than the bottom 50% of the country? And that, to me, is the worst part about debating a socialist, in my experience. They have no commitment to the truth. They'll simply pretend that what you're describing to them isn't happening. They'll divert, deflect, they'll ignore evidence that contradicts the narrative or redefine terms in the middle of a conversation. And honestly, it's just frustrating. Anyway, folks, you let me know what you think in the comments down below. I hope you have a terrific day. Make sure you like and subscribe. Share this video with a friend if you think they'll enjoy it. And I'll see you again in the next one.
Oh shit!
Yeah. Take care. Peace.